We are here to discuss The Last of Us. I do really want to get your thoughts. I'm dying to know. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recap the episode so we're all on point about what we're going to be discussing. So I'm going to take you through. Our second episode of The Last of Us begins in Jakarta, Indonesia in 2003 as the army tracks down a renowned mycologist to consult on a small outbreak at the foot of a fungal infection in a factory. After realizing that the infection is already beyond tracking, her advice is to bomb the city and everyone in it to contain it. Absolutely harrowing stuff. Here's the thing though, we never actually saw them properly identifying the mycologist. They kind of just took the word at a random cafe staff member who was like, oh yeah, that's her. There's like an alternate universe here where the Indonesian government commits a totally unnecessary genocide on the word of some random fed up anarchist lollipop lady. Like there's no verification here. It's like bomb the city and it's like, can I just see your papers? Like, I don't know if you're qualified to make that decision. We go back to 2023. Ellie woke up at gunpoint from a freaked out Joel and Tess asking questions about her bite over breakfast. Ellie had a chicken sandwich while Joel and Tess snacked on a scabby bit of jerky, which I suppose is the quadriceps equivalent of if you're vaccinated, you get to have a €9 meal in the pub. They wander through an incredible looking deserted Boston landscape before coming across a horde of hundreds of infected riding together on the ground. There we learn that the infected are all connected and move in packs, kind of like preteens and moms who should know better on their way to Harry Styles concerts. With the long way blocked, they now have to go the certain death route through a museum where it's quickly apparent that something more dangerous at hand. And so we meet, for the first time ever, we meet the Clickers. And for anyone who hasn't seen them yet, Clickers look like how I used to imagine my face did in secondary school every time I got a spot. And when they scream, it sounds like Katey Harvey doing karaoke. Clickers are blind. She just gave me a little look there. She's not arguing though. Let's just show that. Clickers are blind, but they have super hearing and bat-like echolocation abilities. After a super intense encounter, Ellie's gasp when she first spots a clicker gives their position away, and our heroes have to fight for their lives to beat not one but two of them. Anyone who played the game though, they had notes, man. Come on. First off, waste the limited ammo. Making noise is such a risk. Like the worst thing you can do is actually shoot at the clicker because you're just going to attract more clickers. Just use a poxy shiv, Joel. Come on. And if he's like, oh, I didn't have a shiv equipped, well, I didn't see you open up one drawer or cabinet, so that's on you, pal. But points to Tess for using a melee weapon though, which is an effective clicker killing technique. We all know this, anyone who's played the games. In the end, they arrive at the Capitol building to find it abandoned, as it appears the Fireflies all killed each other after the infection broke out between them. Tess gets frantic when it comes to light that she had been bitten. There's no time for emotional goodbyes, however, as one of the Firefly corpses reanimates and needs to be put down, which activates the horde we encountered earlier on. On Tess's insistence, Joel and Ellie run for safety as the house is overrun, but as the infected are overrunning the house, one spots Tess in the corner and gives her a little Eskimo kiss, a little weird little nuzzle. He starts the old 1, 2, 3, the old 2, 4, 6, but before he could get to 7, 7, 7, Tess blew the whole building, leaving Joel and Ellie on their own, heading for Bill and Frank's as we closed out episode 2. There you go. From me, another excellent episode of The Last of Us. That goes out saying, people know I'm a super fan at this stage. So, guys, finally, let's get to the topic that I've encouraged you to only reveal to me on air. I want to know your thoughts. Katey, we'll start with you. The Last of Us, what are your thoughts on the show so far? Known contrarian, by the way, Katey Harvey, loves having a different opinion to the crowd. So what are your thoughts on the unanimously loved The Last of Us?
Do you think I loved it?
I think you did.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
I loved all of it. Like, I knew I was gonna love it because I love Pedro Pascal.
Yes.
Like, I'm obsessed with anything he does. So that was already a big tick in the column. The only thing that annoys me is, I remember Phil playing the game, and I remember as he was playing, him explaining the storyline to me. So the more I watch, it's starting to come back in flashes. He was saying. So I'm like desperately trying, like, for once I want baby brain to kick in and just like erase it from my mind. But no, I do. I really love it. I think it's I'm not sure if it's going to fill the Walking Dead hole. I'm back rewatching that from the start. But like it fits in nicely because the last few months as well, I've been watching a lot of like creature horror movies. So like I'm very in this mind space of like sci-fi horror creatures, and it's just so well done. And like I think I'm like picking up little things watching it, and then I'll read a theory or something else that somebody's picked up, and I'm like, it's got layers, like it's gonna have that rewatch value. where you're constantly just seeing different things. So yeah, no, I love it so far.
Amazing. Okay, I'm delighted to hear that. Okay, can we go 2 for 2 here? Corporate Keen, you know, sometimes like with Game of Thrones, you know, you watched it, but you're a bit like you weren't as into it as everyone else. You know, you have your own individualized taste. So I'm wondering kind of what are your thoughts? Because I know you are very, very loyal to The Walking Dead. So again, sometimes when you get something that's too similar to something, it may actually put you off. So what are your thoughts on The Last of Us?
Overall, I liked it. I thought well, the reason I liked it was the pacing. I thought like the first 2 episodes, especially the first one, was like the length of a fucking film. But it went by, I thought, at a reasonable pace, especially the second episode. Like I thought, as somebody who's never followed the games or knows what's going on, I thought it was kind of obvious that the woman, I don't know her names, is it Tess?
Yeah.
I thought it was obvious that she was dying, but I thought that was gonna be like dragged out for ages. Do you know what I mean? But like the fact that she died at the end of that episode, I was like, oh, that's good. I like that sort of pace. I don't think it's like The Walking Dead at all. I don't consider them zombies. And the one thing this is like the things I like and don't like, and the things I don't like about the show aren't things that I would really like criticize or rip into it for, because it is really just personal taste. Obviously I don't like fantasy or like sci-fi or like, you know what I mean? All the sort of, unrealistic kind of stuff. And the reason why I love zombie apocalypse, even though it kind of contradicts that, is because most zombie apocalypse shows are like, for example, The Walking Dead is the present day world today, but with zombies. And that's why I find that the show is, for me anyway, like less and less appealing as time goes on, because the world is, as time goes on, more different to the one that's like, that we're in today. You know what I mean? And this is obviously right from the start, 20 years ahead of where, well, like, you know what I mean? It's like 20 years after the apocalypse. But one thing that I loved actually was the start of the first episode as well. Because I was like, why are we starting 2003? That's a bit of a weird, that's a bit of a random year to start with. Like, what's going on here? And I had no idea it was like a time jump right on that, because I don't watch trailers or anything like that either. So I was literally like fully in the dark with it. And then like when his daughter got killed, I was like, oh, that was another thing. That's why I was like, this is actually, again, really good pacing. It's like this happened like, halfway through the first episode or whatever it was. So I'm like, it's, like, it's not a massive compliment coming from me, because I refuse to ever give up on a show. Like even Fear the Walking Dead, I hated it, and I could literally talk about that. I should do my own podcast on that, right? I have so much to say about it. But the last few episodes, I'm postponing it for a while. I'm going to wait till every episode's out, but I will eventually get around to watching that, despite it being shite. So it's not a massive compliment, but I will watch all of The Last of Us if there's, however many seasons. I think it's definitely got my attention at least.
Okay, interesting. It's interesting that kind of thinking about, could it happen, and is this sci-fi or not? I don't know if you've had much time to do Googling around the subject and the quadriceps and could this happen? It's scarily possible. And like I've been reading interviews with scientists who study this kind of fungi in particular, and like a lot of their opinions are it's possible, it's not probable, which is not reassuring. Like we've lived through COVID. We're just like, if there's a chance, then I'm terrified. Like, and that's kind of what they go into. Like, the cold opens are kind of reinforcing this and making it seem more credible. And I think that's kind of giving it the depth that you're speaking of that maybe The Walking Dead didn't have, because they're taking the time to kind of explain, this is how it happens, this is how it goes, this is how different people are reacting to it at different stages, rather than just focusing on our hero. We had kind of in this the mycologist, who was played by Christine Hakim, who's apparently the Indonesian Meryl Streep. Like Indonesian people were like, going crazy that she was actually in this. What were your thoughts on this setup, where it was just like bomb? Like we heard the clip there to kind of kick us in, like immediately going to bomb the entire city. What were your own kind of feelings? So that, for me, I found that stuff is the stuff I find terrifying about this show. Where you're like, that's what people will do. Like,
I have really strong opinions about that, because I've wondered for years. I've tried Googling it and nobody has an answer. Like, why the fuck did they do that? Like they did it in The Walking Dead with Atlanta as well. Like to me, it's like, bombing a city to contain the virus defeats the purpose of. It's like saying, oh yeah, I got rid of the rash that was on my arm because I just sawed my arm off. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't have to deal with that anymore. It's like, yeah, that's great. I mean, technically you don't, but like, it's just like the measure is so extreme that there's almost no point in doing it, because it's like that in itself is worse, if not just as bad as the virus. I think, I don't know.
Morally, yes, but like, and this is what I love. This is like this is what The Last of Us has. It starts you having these debates, like where you're just thinking about, like, is it the right thing to do? From a practical standpoint, like when you get to that stage, it's already gone too far that you're then thinking, how can I limit the damage to the most capability? And that's where it gets scary, because that's where like governments and armies have to make decisions around, like, right, we know millions are gonna die. Can we stop it from being billions? Do you know what I mean? And that's where they're like, so we have to make a decision here where we have to kill 20 million people, and that's awful and it's genocide, but it's actually the least worst option. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, it's setting those stakes as bad. Morally, yes, you're right. There's no right answer here, but like, again, they're like, the entire planet's dead, or it's just these 20 million people. Katey, your own thoughts on the cold open and that kind of the setups that they're doing, where they're kind of giving you the background behind it.
Yeah, I was reading something really interesting, because I was wondering why I found it so sort of like chilling. And basically it's because it was her that suggested the bombing, and it was the military man that looked horrified.
Yes.
Like, I love that twist on it, because usually it's like the military lads that are just like, right, come on, let's do it. Like, I already have it locked and loaded. But the fact it was like, he was so horrified that that's what she suggested. He went in, Jesus, Betty, she has strong opinions. He had such like faith that she would just have a vaccine, like,
Yeah.
and I suppose after being through COVID as well, like, and obviously it was set pre-COVID, he was just like, yeah, but we need a vaccine, as if she was going to pull one out of her arse, you know what I mean? But like, that's the faith that people had in doctors, and I suppose even before COVID, that's a very realistic thing. You know, every outbreak we've had, there's been a vaccine developed. So I just found that really cool, the way he was just like, what do you mean there's no vaccine? What do you mean there's no way to stop this? That like bombing is the answer. Yeah, I just thought it was really cool. And then I was reading as well how they traced the actual outbreak back to Jakarta in like really subtle things through the first episode.
Yeah.
He's probably talked about that already, but like that's just such clever writing. You know, that's the stuff that like you keep discovering the more you talk to people and the more you rewatch it. So yeah, I thought it was a really, really cool opening.
Did you hear about the flower theory, by the way?
Yes, go
Yeah,
for it.
that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it though. Like, for anyone who hasn't heard it.
Oh, I can't. It's like something like the flower, something wrong in the flower factory or something like that, and they mention it in the second episode. But if you look back at the first episode, they have all these different reasons for like not eating like baked goods, and all the people who didn't eat the baked goods ended up surviving and living through the chaos instead of the granny next door who ended up eating
cookies
or cookies, yeah, and she ended up turning, and it's like, oh shit, I don't know how that works, but that sounds pretty bad.
Joel and Sarah didn't have pancakes for breakfast because Joel forgot to get the eggs. Yeah,
you forgot the birthday cake.
Yeah, the birthday cake. Yeah,
yeah, they had
and
all
also,
these opportunities.
Like Jakarta is legitimately, apparently, the biggest exporter of flour in the world. So it's like, even on a real life level, that's another thing. Like that ties it in.
This is what happens when you get the director of Chernobyl behind your show. Like, it's Craig Mazin so this is actually interesting, because the first episode was Craig Mazin directing Neil Druckmann's show. So Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin are making it together. Neil Druckmann made the video game. This episode was Neil Druckmann directing a Craig Mazin written episode, but it actually felt like Chernobyl in that scene. Particularly, I was just thinking, this is pure Chernobyl. This is about the nitty gritty into how this actually happened and what went wrong. Amazing stuff. I absolutely loved it. We got a bit of a deep insight now into Joel and Ellie. I know we were chatting last week with the two Kevs around like Ellie, and we didn't really get much of her and Bella Ramsey's portrayal of her to kind of make a strong opinion. We got more of that here, and we really got to see Joel, Pedro Pascal, for me. You learn so much about him by little choices that he makes. Like, even like, he'll make little smart ass comments that kind of tells you he's had a teenage daughter before. Do you remember when like she's walking into the room and she's like, it's written bad in here, and he's like, only you, and stuff like that? He'll make little smart ass comments where you can tell he's still got a bit of humanity, but then there's other little choices that he makes. Like, this wasn't in the game or anything, like where when he realizes Tess is infected and she kind of walks towards him, he just flinches and he just takes a step back, you know? So you're kind of seeing so much into the characters through little things now. What are your own impressions of Joel and Ellie? Like, how are you kind of taking them as characters so far?
Well, one thing before I get to that, one thing I will say I found really funny was when Tess revealed that she was infected. I was expecting it to be like, you know, like a bite, you know, like a nibble, like you'd see in The Walking Dead, and her whole fucking collarbone was like gone. I was like,
Yeah.
I should have noticed that like earlier. Like, she managed to hide that. I don't know, but yeah, Joel Ellie. I mean, like, I'll be honest, I'm not overly invested in the characters yet. But I would say a lot of that is because it's just still pretty early into the show. Sometimes I do take a while to warm up the characters, so I wouldn't say I've got a massive problem, but I did find it funny when I realized that it was your man who got his head crushed by the mountain. That I was like, oh my god, it's him. And then when I recognized Leanna Mormon, I was like, oh right. Like, this is mad. But yeah, they're all right. I don't really have strong opinions either way in the characters just yet.
Okay, interesting. Katie, your thoughts, Joel and Ellie, how are you feeling about them now? And do you have any kind of preference or like what's going on? This is what I love about people who like watch a show that you already kind of know.
I really like how they wrote Ellie in the second episode, because I think it's hard to get smart ass teenager right and have it not be annoying as fuck.
Yeah.
So I think they're getting the balance right with her, where she's making smart remarks, but then like when they're in the hotel and like she reverts to like a scared little girl because she sees a corpse, you know. I think they're playing that really, really well. And then you can kind of see Joel warming to her slightly. And I absolutely loved the scene where they came face to face with the guard and he had the flashback to the first episode of holding his daughter. And it just kind of explained like, it kind of explained how he's going to be for the whole series to me. You know what I mean? This is his makeup, you know, for his daughter dying. It's like, okay, well, if I can protect this girl, it's going to go some way towards like making amends, even though it wasn't his fault what happened to his daughter. But like, you can kind of see the cogs turn in his head already that like, okay, shit, like this is almost like a surrogate daughter for me. So I like it. Like, I think they're writing her the right way for now.
I agree with exactly what you said. I had the same thoughts myself this week, as we kind of really got to see Ellie's so important, because like for the show and the story to work, you have to feel certain ways about her, and like you have to feel strongly, like whatever way they go, you have to feel strongly about it. Like last week we just didn't get enough of her, but this week they started to kind of get it in, because like again, it's okay where you just sympathize with her, you like her, but we have kids like that all the time, and that's just a generic kid trope. You have to love Ellie, you know what I mean? You have to actually feel the same way Joel feels about her, do you know what I mean? Like not Joel, but like, you know, in what you're saying, like surrogate kind of parent role, you have to have that almost protectiveness of Ellie and stuff like that as well for it to work. And part of that is her being charming and her being good, but like she is a defensive teenager who's a bit of a little shit at times too. But what I like about, even in her humor and her smart arsery, is that element of vulnerability, like you're saying. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you remember she kept asking for a gun, and then like Joel's like no, and then she's like, all right, I'll throw a fucking sandwich at him then. You know what I mean? Her smart arse isn't like just being a dick to other people. It's just she's being a bit self-depreciating or just generally funny. Like, so yeah, I think so. I was very reassured by how they handled Ellie, and like I'm totally over the fact Bella Ramsey doesn't look like Ellie in the games. Like I'm in. I think she's absolutely nailing it, and I just can't wait to see more. And Cian, I get what you're saying, where you're still like kind of waiting to be connected. I don't feel that that's wrong for what they've shown you. I'm very certain, knowing that some things are coming up and knowing some things they've had in the trailer and knowing what they mean and how they impact people, you're going to get there. But again, like, you know, that's, we'll see. So, but I wouldn't say you're feeling wrong or anything for how you're feeling yet. That's kind of a fair assessment at this stage. There's some absolutely, speaking of the video game, there's some absolutely perfect recreations of it in this, and it's very like, you'd notice that the video game creator made this. Like, so some of the scenery, like the hotel, the museum, Ellie walking across the wood is literally a shot for shot copy of it. It's the type of thing where we were saying last week with the two Kevs, it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme the entire time. We're just like, oh, I know that. The entire time. The Capitol building looks identical, and even then there were so many Easter eggs from Neil Druckmann around the video game, where it's like Ellie can't swim, using stealth to avoid the clickers. It actually felt like the video game, the way they were kind of crawling around. Like, you do that in the game, you're crawling around furniture just to get away from them, but then like stepping on broken glass without realizing it kind of sets them off. That's a game trope as well. The previous room they were in falling down, so they weren't able to go back. crossing the planks, like we said, giving the character a boost, like to get up to places, blocking doors off as well, locked doors. Video gamers will definitely be looking at the doors that are locked and going, there's so much ammo in that room. If I can find a way to unlock that door, I am minted. But even like the way that they taped up their wounds at the end, they had sound effects that were straight out of the game. So loads of Easter eggs to love, but again, loads of new stuff too. What I kind of want to know is, though, there's a lot of like world building in this. How are you finding this post-apocalyptic world, having been used to kind of where it's kind of desolate at times, but then it gets really intense at other times? Whereas like if you went out in the wild in The Walking Dead, it was much heavier populated, especially around the cities. How's that kind of settling with you? Katey, what's that with you?
Oh God, I had to mute myself. I'm already unmuted. I'm just trying to spare you listening to Cocomelon in the background.
You're all good.
Yeah, like it's definitely, the background's a lot more interesting in The Walking Dead. I appreciate that. Like we had 11 seasons of the forest pretty much in The Walking Dead. So I actually really like the change to a city. Though I have to say, when they went into the museum, it did remind me of that episode of The Walking Dead that started in the museum. Remember when they went in for the plow?
Oh yeah.
It gave me vibes of that.
Good show.
But yeah, I like, it's like Cian said, it's like it doesn't overly remind me of The Walking Dead, because the sets are different enough. One thing I kind of miss, like you said, is like a bigger cast, because in The Walking Dead, like you could have asked us all our favorite characters and we probably all would have had a different top 3 at least.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like I hope they do introduce more characters. I know I obviously haven't played the video game, so I don't know like who else there is to come in and out of it, but I would like some more population in it.
Yeah, there is definitely other characters, but it's very centered on Joel and Ellie's adventure. So the characters they meet are the characters they'll come across in various different ways as the time goes on. But it's definitely different in that you don't have like a core set of characters. You've Joel and Ellie, but you're thinking about Joel and Ellie, but the story is designed to get you thinking about them at all times because it's going to twist and turn from here. So, but yeah, I definitely hear that's a huge difference. Cian, what are your own thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of prefer the Walking Dead setup in that respect. Like, I like being able to go T-Dog, he's the man, you know what I mean? Or Eugene, or you know what I mean? Like random characters that pop in. I'm like, yeah, but yeah, I'm not really. I just in shows generally, I'm not overly into like the main character always. Do you know what I mean? So if it's like, especially if it's built around 2 characters specifically, if I'm not really into those characters, then it's not as exciting for me, you know, to watch. I do prefer significantly an urban environment to a rural one when it comes to apocalypse shows and stuff like that. It looks really interesting. I enjoy looking at the buildings and stuff and seeing like, you know, this is what like a post-bombed city, you know, 20 years on it looks like. The one thing I don't really like though, and it's just again, it's not a criticism of the show. It's not something they should change. It's just personal taste. I don't consider like the creatures in this show to be zombies. Do you know what I mean? Like this isn't like, for me, this isn't a zombie show. This is a different type of apocalyptic show. You know what I mean? One like the sort of zombies you see in kind of what is it? Is it I Am Legend and what's the other one where they're kind of running and screaming and jumping and clicking, and even like to look at, it's like that doesn't even look like an eroded human, you know, or they're not even supposed to be dead. I don't think they're supposed to be like living.
They're being controlled. Yeah, they're being controlled by the fungus. Yeah.
So it's not what.
I was gonna say it reminds me of a film, but you will not get the reference to it at all because it's definitely one you have not seen. But like the Super Mario Brothers movie from the early 90s.
Yeah, we're the obvious comparison. We're all thinking of it.
No, but like, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Do you remember it?
Years when I was a child, like, yeah.
So like the creatures in that were controlled by a sort of fungus goo type thing that came down through the walls. Like, you're gonna get tweets about this because I'm right. But like that's I kind of get what Cian said about they don't feel like zombies. It scared the shit out of me the first time they start running. What the fuck? It seems more creature feature to me, which, like I said, I've been watching a lot of that recently. I don't know if you've seen Barbarian, this film that was out fairly recently. and the titty witch. Like it kind of, I feel like it's a whole gang full of titty witches rather than zombies.
Yeah, you're right. It isn't a zombie show, and like what I'll always say is it's a show about grief and loss that's kind of set in the zombie in the apocalypse, but it's not. They are very different, like as well, like kind of but there's a few different things that for me, I find this much scarier than the Walking Dead so far. And again, like that's completely talking about the show alone. Like that's nothing to do with the game, because I'm having a completely different experience to what I did when I played it. Like the intensity, the realism of it, the fact that it's based in science and reality. Do you know what I mean? Like even today I was reading kind of a mycologist interview, and they were saying like, yeah, COVID has actually made us more susceptible to fungi illnesses, because now many of us after COVID are immunocompromised. So whereas
you need to go down that rabbit hole.
I love it because it allows me to buy in so quicker. You know what I mean? It's terrifying to me that this could happen. You know what I mean? And then everything you watch has stakes, because we've lived through COVID and we've done that where we've seen the worst case scenario happen, and then it's like, holy shit. So I love that aspect of it as well. I love the fact that they're connected. That's such a unique idea. Like they call it that, and that's a real thing. Like when fungus take over ants, they'll take it over in the forest. It's called the wood wide web. Like where they're connected to each other, and there's the kind of things you may have heard, like references to trees are able to speak to each other, and that's true fungus as well. Like so, it's incredible. Like, and I'm fascinated with that. So I agree they're not zombies, but I find them almost scarier. Like and disgusting. Those tendrils, lads. Those like coming out of their mouths, like that's
one aspect I found kind of interesting about the zombie kissing tests was that apparently like they can spread without being violent if you don't fight them. Apparently, like, obviously in like The Walking Dead, it's like, but like here, it's like their job isn't necessarily to like kill the human, it's just to get into the human. Do you know what I mean? So if the human doesn't fight, then it's like it's kind of a different way of getting infected. I thought that aspect was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think as well, like I think that was them identifying that she was one of them. And like they could tell that she'd been bitten and she was infected, and they didn't see her as a threat either. So like that's why so many were running by her, but then the one that stopped didn't kind of attack her or kind of get defensive, or didn't scan her to see that. He just went over and lobbed the gob essentially. Clickers are kind of new, and this is kind of an evolution of it. I don't know, kind of, Cian, did you kind of, because there was a thing where I was listening to the HBO podcast with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann kind of talking about it, and they said that they had to reshoot the scene. Do you remember when Pedro Pascal kind of goes, they can't see, but they can hear, and he kind of gestures that to Ellie? That had to be reshot because, again, they felt that they weren't clear enough in that. So do you guys get how clickers work? Does that make sense to you? Like what's going on there and why they click?
Time. I didn't get that at the time, but obviously now I do. And I think it's an interesting concept.
So they have echolocation. So why they click is it's the same way bats do the same. Where they'll make noise, and where they make noise in that direction, if you move or make a sound, they can pick up where you are. They can see you, they can tell where you are, and that's how they're able to kind of go. Why? And that's why bats can kind of tell where you are in the dark or find a way around in the dark and so on. Just to kind of give a background for anyone who hasn't watched or who hasn't kind of played the games or something, clickers are like stage 3. So you have like, you don't have walkers in this, you don't have zombies, there's different types. So they're kind of classified as the people you would have seen at the end, they're runners. You have stalkers who are kind of in between clickers as well. I won't tell you what stalkers do. You can kind of probably guess a fair bit of it. But then if you've been a zombie or if you've been infected for over a year, you then become a clicker.
Right.
And that's kind of like, so the evolutions, and again, it evolves more, but I'm not going to tell you because I'll let it happen.
That's mad.
With the clickers, why couldn't people just have thrown something so they make a noise somewhere else and have them run after it?
You're right, and people who played the game are like, throw a brick, throw a bottle. Like
oh yeah, okay, all right. I thought I was missing some like mad important detail there when I was watching it. I was like, So why aren't they just throwing something and running away? Like,
yeah. No, you're right. Like, but again, kind of, I also thought they did that scene very well, like in a very Jurassic Park kind of way, where they're like, if we get this wrong, we definitely die. You know what I mean? So it's very easy for us to sit back in the comforts of our own homes and be like, just throw a bottle and it'd be grand. But like, if we're in there, we'd probably be a bit more frozen. You know what I mean? Because you're like, I've zero margin for error here. It's my life if I get it wrong. You know. What are your thoughts on clickers? Did that scene kind of? How did you find that scene? Like, it was pretty intense.
Yeah, like it was. I thought the scene was very good. I thought it was they did a good job of building tension and that sort of thing. Again, I'm just like, I don't know what it is. I'm just not into like monsters. Do you know what I mean? Like, like what appeals to me about a zombie? Again, it's not realistic. I'm hesitant to use the word realistic when talking about like a zombie apocalypse show, but like, I like the idea that it's like a human, but in this like a different form, like a human where there's something off about them. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a clicker is so fucked. But it makes a bit more sense to me now that you've explained the whole like stages. I didn't get that at the time, so I was very lost. I don't know. It's cool in one sense and it's interesting in one sense, but in the other, I'm like also a bit like disconnected from it because I don't know. It's like I can't really comprehend what I'm looking at, kind of. But it's interesting.
Okay. Clickers. How that scene set up for you, Katey?
Yeah, I really liked them, and I really loved where Joel had the flashlight and he was reloading, and you heard the clicking get closer. Like it was very cinematic to me, you know, using sound to tell the story. I really like that, and like you mentioned Jurassic Park, it's like, you know, the famous scene with the water on the dashboard, and it's how you know that something is coming closer. So I thought they did a really good job with that. They do look a little bit cartoony to me. So once the reveal happened, I probably didn't love it as much. But I wasn't scared of them. Like the tension dissipated slightly just because. What do they remind me of? They look like a flower to me, you know, like a Venus flytrap or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like, I didn't find them as scary, but like up until they were kind of revealed, I thought like I was like, okay, yeah, like this is like a horror movie.
That's the, like, but you're picking up on the right things there, because that's kind of the way that you feel around clickers. It's more the sound of them and the fact that they're around, but you don't know where they are, and you're like, if I get it wrong, I'm fucked. You know what I mean? So like that's part of it too. So that's a fair observation. A couple of differences from the game for anyone wondering, or anyone kind of who's interested in the comparison side by side. In the game, Tess dies at the exact same point, but it's actually Fedra agents who kill her. There was a change here where Craig Mazin asked the question that I don't know how I'd never asked, or a lot of gamers never asked, like, why are Fedra looking for them when they're not far outside the QZ? It doesn't actually make any sense. So they replaced that altogether. Also, Ellie didn't get bit at this stage in the game. She actually proved she was immune to Joel by being able to walk through spores, which is they've got rid of the idea of spores, like where it's just like there are rooms and sections where there's spores that if you breathe into spores, you'll then become infected. Because when you actually make it scientific and try and make it realistic, it's like spores will just grow everywhere and just take over the world. So they changed that up, and that's where they brought in the kind of connectivity side of it, and that's more how this works instead. So that's how she proved to Joel she wasn't infected, by getting bit, but then the contrast between what Tess is suffering and what Ellie's suffering. We kind of touched on the kiss at the end, and that's, it was mildly traumatizing, nightmare inducing a little bit for me anyway. What were your own thoughts on the kiss? Was it creepy? Was it effective? Was it just weird? Were you a bit freaked out, or did it work? Is it going to haunt your dreams? Katey, where's the kiss sitting for you?
I don't know, maybe I'm desensitized, because I was just like, that's the thing that happened. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
what a normal way to act.
Like, because my whole thing behind it was, obviously she was trying to keep herself steady to light the lighter. So I was like, oh, that's like selfless to the end, you know what I mean? Like, because that wouldn't be a nice way to go. So yeah, but like, it didn't bother me. Like, I've seen some people online saying like, oh my god, it's so horrific and traumatizing and this and that, and I'm like, I just didn't feel that way about it at all.
I love that. Good girl, Tess. Taking one for the team. There you go. Fair play. That's a bullet. You're taking a bullet there. I think it's the tendrils coming out the mouth. It's getting to me a little bit. It's like the less of that, the better. Like when the doctor at the start pulled the tendrils out and they were still moving like they were worms, and I'm like, that just, I don't know. That's the physical horror that like is kind of sick to me. Cian, your own thoughts on the kiss? Was it effective? Was it weird? Was it just how was that selling with you?
Yeah, I'd be more in your camp there. I thought it was rotten. I think that shit's disgusting. I'm like, I don't like it at all. Not.
Maybe I'm just like, it just looks like something you'd see in like a teenage disco embrace. So maybe I'm just like, no.
Oh yeah, no, we shifted your one with the tendrils over there. Hilarious. Interesting note as well, like there was kind of the last message that Tess gave to Joel was save who you can save, and I kind of heard in the HBO podcast that they were talking about how that was almost a message to say get over Sarah, you can actually save Ellie, you know what I mean? And we can kind of see, Katey, you talked about the evolution, and I don't think it's kind of too much of a spoiler that what you said, that's the way the character seems to be heading, at least for now. He's evolving in that direction, is feeling more and more protected the more time he spends with Ellie, although obviously look now the two of them are going to be at odds because Ellie was starting to bond with Tess. We could see it there, like Tess showing her a little nod of respect, telling her she had balls earlier in the episode, and Ellie having a little proud smile. And then Joel obviously had an ambiguous, possibly romantic relationship with Tess, and the only reason Tess is dead now is because Ellie's there. So I don't know, that may scupper and that may affect their relationship and impact it. This show is kind of going a little bit different in the way that it does with the games. But she turned around and said, save who you can save. So that's the little message that she's leaving with Joel. And I think that's going to be important. So that's kind of the show. That was the episode itself. Of the two episodes, what was your guys' favorite so far?
Probably the first. No, I'm going to say the first. Well, I don't know. Probably the first one. I mean, there's only been two, so I don't know if it's like the greatest, most prestigious prize in the world. But I just think, I think, because with pilots, you kind of come in and you're like, you're kind of but with me anyway, there's a bit of like, I don't want to say skepticism because I wanted to like the show obviously from the start, but there's almost like a kind of nervous sort of like, oh, am I going to like this? Am I not going to like this? You know what I mean? Whereas, so I didn't really know what to expect. So I think it did a good job of sort of getting me into it in one episode. You know what I mean? I kind of, so I'm going to go with episode 1.
Okay. Katey, favorite of the two?
Yeah, maybe episode 1. And it's kind of something we've talked about off air where I like seeing the outbreaks and like not a lot of shows give a lot of time to it. And like as Cian mentioned, this was a film length episode, like almost just dedicated, a big chunk of it to the outbreak. So yeah, I kind of liked seeing that.
Nice.
And again, there was more characters and stuff, which is something I like. So yeah, probably episode 1.
Okay, interesting. I think as well, like, and I hope that I've obviously no idea, but I hope that the opening continues in that way where it kind of takes us away from Joel and Ellie's story and tells us more about the outbreak. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm fascinated by that as well. Like, and I like that running theme that they've kind of set. So hopefully that keeps going. Have you any theories so far, Katey? You love a theory.
I do love a theory, and I'm actively trying not to look them up for this because people have played the game, and it seems, from what I've heard, it does seem to be sticking very, very close to what the game storyline is. So I'm trying not to read too much into it, but I don't know. I don't really have theories yet.
Okay, no worries. Well, do check in if you do have something. Let us know, and because I'd be interested to see what you think. Like, my favorite theory that you've ever had so far is Robb Stark. He's gonna make it all the way. Like he's going, going the distance. Like, yeah, that was one of my faves. So I do want to check in on. Cian, anything with you? Have you got any idea where it's going? Any theories or any kind of?
You see, like, I watched people play this game before, right? Okay. But like years ago, like when this game came out, like what, 2013 or something like that?
10 years ago, yeah.
So I watched people play this game start to finish in like 2014 or 15. I don't remember it. I don't remember. Like I have a vague idea of why people why Ellie is important, but I don't remember what happens. Okay. So I'm not gonna go any theories or predictions. I'm just gonna see how it goes, kind of way.
In case you accidentally trigger a memory, is it?
Yeah, yeah. Literally, I'm actually scared. I don't want to explore any further. So I'm like, right, I'm good. Yeah. Blissful ignorance. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Good stuff. That's Last of Us episode 2. Before